The global crisis did impact the Chinese auto industry. It was in the first few years of the 2000s, particularly after 2002 and the ascension to WTO, the auto industry was taking off. The sales were increasing at a rate of about 20% per year. In 2008, that dropped to just a little over 6%. The government stepped in with some stimulus, some incentives to get customers to buy cars, and that worked. The sales went up by almost 40% from 2009. But at the end of 2011, those incentives expired. The sales growth went back down to a more reasonable 10–15%, somewhere in that range. But the auto industry, the sales are still growing. The economy of China was built originally on several pillar industries, about 5 pillar industries, and the automobile industry was one of those. So the Chinese government intended for the economy to grow as the auto industry grows, and as such it has done so. One of the things that you'll see when you look at the economic data is that the growth of the automobile sales mirrors or tracks the growth of GDP per capita very closely. The other thing that you see is that the sales of automobiles in China are very much a personal issue. It's the second largest investment, right behind housing. And so what you find is as households become more and more wealthy, wages go up, earnings go up, the second thing they buy is an automobile. So that's one of their targets. So it's very definitely automobile sales are tied to the economy. Both, I'm not sure which is cause and effect, but there's both a cause and an effect. In developed countries, the ratio of cars to households is something around 70 to 80 cars per household, or per 100 households, excuse me. And in China, it's really somewhere between 8 and 10. So it's really much, much less. There's a lot of room for growth. As incomes continue to grow, then more and more people will buy cars. Another interesting point to me about this is the structure of the auto industry in China. The multinational companies that have the joint ventures and have the established brands that are sold in North America and Europe or Japan or Korea, those companies are targeting the higher end market. So their cars are more expensive, and it's really the richer people that buy their cars. The Chinese domestic manufacturers, they target the low end of the market, so they sell a lot of cars to the first-time buyer, and that's really the target market. And for them, that's where they expect the growth to be. Unfortunately, in the last 2 or 3 years, the growth hasn't been as rapid as they had hoped it would be. Now, what's happened is there were close to 200 automobile manufacturers in China at one time, and the government wants to reduce that. What they would really like to have is 2 to 3 major manufacturers. Right now, even with the reductions, there's still about 130. But of those 130, the top 15 represent about 95% of the market. And also of these 15, 11 of the 15 are state-owned enterprises. They're owned by the government, where the other 4, Great Wall, Geely, BYD, and Lifan, are all privately owned and are growing. But those, I listed those in order of the amount of sales. So the private companies are down at the bottom in terms of the top 15. You're not going to see the Chinese cars in the really developed markets for a while yet. They're just not. They don't have the maturity level yet to compete in those markets where the markets are saturated essentially. Where you see the Chinese manufacturers exporting, particularly South America is their number one. As of 2011, South America was the number one export target, followed by Africa, the Middle East, other parts of Asia, Eastern Europe, but not but not Western Europe. Eastern Europe as it continues to develop. And I think you'll continue to see that. It's the developing countries where the economies are developing, the Chinese auto manufacturers are sending their less expensive cars to try to penetrate the market. What they will do, I suspect, is what they've done in other industries, like the white goods industry, for example. They'll learn how to export and they'll learn how to sell outside of China in these developing markets. And then as the manufacturers, the Chinese manufacturers themselves mature, then they will most likely try to penetrate the more mature markets. Right now, in 2012, the estimate was that Chinese auto manufacturers exported about 1 million vehicles. And the expectation is by 2015, it'll be 2 million, and by 2020, it'll be 3 million. If you were in North America, you would say every product manufactured in China was of low quality. And so some are of low quality, some are not of low quality, but the perception is that the quality is low. If you go back to the 1970s, the Japanese auto manufacturers and the Korean auto manufacturers, for example, their vehicles were viewed as low quality in North America as well. But over a 15-20 year period, experience with the vehicles themselves in the market, both the quality improved and the perception of the quality improved. Again, I suspect there will be that same phenomena with the Chinese auto manufacturers. However, at this point, the Chinese auto manufacturers probably do not produce high enough quality to compete in these markets. One of the things that obviously contributes to the Chinese pollution problem is the vehicle. So they have the government has implemented European standards. And the targets are to have the European standards in place and in force in stages between now and 2020. The target is a 40 to 45% reduction in those pollutants by 2015 or 2020 at the latest. So that's number one. They're not going to be able to do that by using diesel fuel, for example, because they just simply don't have the refining capability to refine diesel to the level that is needed to do that. So it has to be through alternative fuel vehicles, most likely through electric vehicles. Beijing, for example, is asking that city government buy fleets of electric vehicles, and that the taxis get ready to convert to electric vehicles. So if these kinds of things happen, then you'll start to see some effect, at least inside the cities.